I wish I could say this was rare. Unfortunately, it wasn't. The way Nick Reiner walked into my courtroom that Tuesday morning told me everything I needed to know before he even opened his mouth. Not the nervous shuffle of someone facing consequences, but the loose-limbed swagger of a man who never met a problem his father's name couldn't fix. Designer jeans with strategic holes that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Sunglasses pushed up on his head like a crown. The kind of casual arrogance that comes from 32 years of believing the rules are suggestions. I was looking over his file when my clerk, Eleanor, knocked on my door. "Judge, that 1030 case, you're going to want to see this one yourself." She was right. Nicholas Martin Reiner, son of Rob Reiner, the Hollywood director, who gave us When Harry Met Sally and A Few Good Men. The file was thick for what should have been a simple DUI case, but the charges told a different story. Operating under the influence, reckless endangerment, resisting arrest, and, the one that made my stomach turn, assault on an elderly veteran in a restaurant parking lot. I read the incident report twice. Nick had been drinking at Graziella's on Federal Hill, celebrating what he called his 6-month sobriety milestone with a fifth of Grey Goose. The irony wasn't lost on anyone, especially not on the 74-year-old Korean War veteran he shoved to the pavement when the man asked him to move his BMW from the handicap space. Arthur Chen, Purple Heart recipient, 90% disabled from shrapnel wounds, walking with a cane, diabetes requiring daily insulin injections, limited mobility in his left arm from war injuries sustained in 1952. Nick knocked him down because Arthur took too long getting out of his way. The police report included witness statements. Emily Chen, Arthur's granddaughter, had driven him to Graziella's for his birthday dinner. She told police, "My grandfather moved slowly because of his war injuries. We got there early specifically to avoid crowds. The man was drunk and aggressive from the moment we approached his car." Maria Santos, a server at Graziella's, witnessed the whole thing. Her statement read, "The old man was so polite. He knocked on the window gently and said, 'Excuse me, sir.' He just wanted to use the handicap space he needed. The young man got out screaming. I've never seen anything so cruel." But the third witness statement made my hands clench into fists. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, an emergency room physician who was leaving the restaurant, had tried to help Arthur after he fell. Her statement was clinical and devastating. Patient presented with dislocated left shoulder, abrasions on both hands and left knee, and acute confusion consistent with head trauma. He kept asking for his granddaughter and apologizing for ruining dinner. The assailant showed no remorse and continued to berate the victim while I was providing medical assistance. The prosecution had body cam footage. They had restaurant security video. They had 3 witnesses, including Arthur's granddaughter, who'd been helping him to dinner for his birthday. But what they really had was Nick Reiner's own mouth, recorded in stunning high definition as he shouted at Officer Martinez during the arrest. I called the case. The state versus Nicholas Martin Reiner. Nick approached the podium like he was walking onto a movie set. His lawyer, expensive suit, Harvard law pin on his lapel, stayed a step behind, briefcase in hand like a prop. "Good morning, Your Honor," the lawyer said. Defense counsel James Morrison, representing Mr. Reiner. I looked at Nick. He was studying his fingernails, completely disengaged. "Mr. Reiner, you're charged with operating under the influence, reckless endangerment, simple assault on an elderly person, and resisting arrest. How do you plead?" Nick looked up with the kind of smile that had probably charmed his way out of 100 scrapes. Not guilty, obviously. Obviously. Mr. Morrison, I said to his lawyer, I've reviewed the evidence submitted by the prosecution. This includes body camera footage from the arresting officer and security footage from Graziella's restaurant. Are you prepared to proceed? Morrison nodded. Yes, Your Honor. We believe there are significant mitigating circumstances that will become apparent during testimony. I turned to the prosecutor, Sarah Kim, a sharp woman who'd been handling cases in my courtroom for 8 years. Ms. Kim, please present your evidence. She stood and activated the courtroom monitor. Your Honor, at approximately 9:47 p.m. on January 15th, officers responded to a disturbance at Graziella's restaurant. Mr. Reiner had been drinking heavily and was parked illegally in a handicapped space, where Mr. Arthur Chen, a disabled veteran, asked him to move his vehicle. The security footage began playing, black and white but crystal clear. I watched Nick stumble out of Graziella's front door, keys in his hand, clearly intoxicated. Arthur Chen was walking slowly across the parking lot, his granddaughter Emily holding his arm. They approached Nick's BMW, which was taking up the only handicapped space. On the video, Arthur tapped on Nick's window. Nick rolled it down, and they exchanged words I couldn't hear. Then Arthur stepped back, clearly trying to de-escalate. That's when Nick got out of the car. What happened next made my hands tighten around my gavel. Nick shoved Arthur Chen hard enough to send the 74-year-old veteran stumbling backward. Arthur's cane went flying. He hit the pavement, his granddaughter screaming as she tried to catch him. Nick just stood there, swaying, shouting something at the man on the ground. Ms. Kim, I said, do we have audio? Yes, Your Honor, from Mr. Reiner's own phone. She produced an evidence bag containing Nick's iPhone. Mr. Reiner was filming himself during the confrontation. He posted it to his social media before deleting it 20 minutes later. We recovered it from his phone during the arrest. The audio came through the courtroom speakers in perfect clarity. Nick's voice, slurred but audible. Move faster, old man. Some of us have places to be. Then Arthur's quiet response. Son, I'm just trying to get to dinner with my granddaughter. It's my birthday. Nick's laugh was cold. Not my problem, Gramps. I'm celebrating too. The sound of the shove. Emily's scream. Arthur hitting the pavement. And then Nick's voice again, louder now. That's what you get for bothering me. The courtroom was silent. Even Morrison looked uncomfortable. Your Honor, Miss Kim continued. 3 minutes later, Officer Martinez arrived on scene. Mr. Chen was on the ground with a dislocated shoulder. His granddaughter was on the phone with 911, and Mr. Reiner was attempting to drive away when Officer Martinez activated his lights. The body cam footage started automatically. I watched Officer Martinez approach Nick's BMW as it sat half in the handicap space, half blocking the fire lane. Nick had the window down, engine running. Sir, please turn off your vehicle and step out. Do you know who my father is? Nick's voice came through clear as day. Officer Martinez was professional. Sir, I need you to turn off the vehicle. My father is Rob Reiner, the director. You know, Spinal Tap, When Harry Met Sally, The Princess Bride. Sir, please turn off the engine and step out of the vehicle. That's when Nick said it. The line that would define the next hour of his life. Listen, my dad literally created your favorite movies. He's probably richer than your entire family combined. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to write up some bullshit report about how the old guy fell down, and I'm going to drive home. Deal?" Officer Martinez paused for exactly 3 seconds. Then, "Sir, you're under arrest for operating under the influence." Nick's reaction was immediate and loud. "Are you fucking kidding me? I could buy this entire city. My father donates more to charity than you make in a decade." What followed was 8 minutes of Nick Reiner explaining exactly how untouchable he believed himself to be, while Officer Martinez calmly placed him under arrest and read him his rights. The footage ended. The courtroom was dead quiet. I looked at Nick, who was now slouched in his chair like a teenager in detention. "Mr. Reiner, is that your voice on the recording?" He shrugged. "I was drunk. People say stupid things when they're drunk." "Mr. Reiner, you shoved a 74-year-old disabled veteran to the pavement. Do you remember doing that?" Another shrug. "I barely touched him. He's old. Old people fall." Morrison put his hand on Nick's arm, trying to quiet him. Too late. "Mr. Reiner," I continued, "you told Officer Martinez that your father's wealth made you untouchable. Do you stand by that statement?" Nick looked at me like I was asking him to explain basic physics. "I mean, yeah, money talks. That's how the world works." For a moment, nobody moved, not even my court reporter. I felt the whole room leaned forward, like we all heard the same warning. I set down my pen and looked at Nick Reiner. Really looked at him. 32 years old. More opportunities than most people dream of. Access to the best treatment programs money could buy. And he'd chosen to celebrate 6 months of sobriety by getting drunk and assaulting a war veteran. "Mr. Reiner," I said quietly, "let me tell you how my world works." I opened the file and read aloud. Arthur Chen, enlisted in the United States Army at age 18, served 2 tours in Korea, earned the Purple Heart when shrapnel from a Chinese grenade nearly took his leg off. Came home, worked 40 years as a machinist at Electric Boat, building submarines to keep this country safe. Raised 3 children as a single father after his wife died of cancer. Volunteers at the VA hospital every Sunday. January 15th was his 74th birthday. I looked up. "You knocked him down because he asked you to move your car." Nick was staring at his hands now, the swagger finally starting to crack. "Your father is indeed a talented director," I continued. "I've enjoyed his films. But talent doesn't transfer through DNA, and wealth doesn't grant immunity. You want to know what talks in my courtroom? Character talks. Accountability talks. Respect talks. Money? Money just sits there and stays quiet." Morrison stood. "Your Honor, my client has struggled with substance abuse for years. He's been in and out of treatment programs trying to get clean. This relapse doesn't define—" "Counselor," I interrupted, "addiction is a disease. Assaulting elderly veterans is a choice." I turned back to Nick. "Mr. Reiner, you filmed yourself knocking down a war hero and posted it online for entertainment. Then you tried to bribe your way out of consequences. Help me understand your thought process." Nick finally looked up. "I wasn't thinking. I was wasted." "You were thinking clearly enough to film it. You were thinking clearly enough to invoke your father's name. You were thinking clearly enough to offer Officer Martinez a deal. Which part required clear thinking, and which part was the alcohol?" No answer. "Let me tell you what I see," I said. "I see a man who spent 32 years believing consequences are optional. I see someone who thinks wealth is a get-out-of-jail-free card. And I see someone who knocked down a Purple Heart recipient and called it entertainment. Morrison tried again. Your Honor, Mr. Reiner has already enrolled in an intensive outpatient program. Has he apologized to Mr. Chen? We've reached out through counsel. That's not what I asked. Has your client personally apologized to the man he assaulted? Silence. Mr. Reiner, answer my question. Nick shifted in his seat. My lawyer said not to contact him. Your lawyer was protecting you from civil liability. I'm asking about human decency. Have you, Nicholas Reiner, apologized to Arthur Chen? Not yet. It's been 3 weeks. What are you waiting for? Another shrug. I don't know. An opening? I felt my father's voice in my head, words he'd spoken to me 40 years ago when I was young and arrogant. Franco, respect is like planting a garden. You can't rush it, but you can't ignore it either. Mr. Reiner, I said, here's your opening. I reached for my sentencing guidelines, but I already knew what I was going to do. This wasn't about punishment. This was about education. Mr. Reiner, I'm sentencing you to 90 days in the Adult Correctional Institution, suspended pending completion of the following accountability program. Morrison started to object, but I held up my hand. First, you will complete a certified alcohol treatment program, not outpatient, not some luxury spa retreat, a real program where you'll sit in a circle with people who can't write a check to make their problems disappear. I looked at him directly. Second, you will personally apologize to Arthur Chen, face to face, in his home, if he'll have you. You explain what you did wrong and what you've learned. If he declines to see you, you write a handwritten letter and deliver it yourself to his mailbox. Nick was listening now, the casual arrogance replaced by something that looked like actual attention. Third, you will complete 200 hours of community service at the Providence VA Hospital. You'll work in the physical therapy wing, helping elderly veterans with mobility exercises. The same veterans you mocked, you'll help regain their strength. I paused, making sure he understood. Fourth, you will write and record a public service announcement about the dangers of drunk driving and the importance of respecting our veterans. No script written by publicists, no mention of your father's career, just you explaining what you did and why it was wrong. Morrison was scribbling notes furiously. Fifth, you will complete 50 hours of community service, specifically with disabled veterans. You assist with transportation, help them navigate benefits, whatever they need. And you'll do it without cameras, without press coverage, without anyone knowing who your father is. I set down my pen. Finally, you will submit a 2,000-word written reflection on privilege and accountability. Not an essay about your journey or your struggles, a clear-eyed examination of how you've used your family's wealth to avoid consequences and what you plan to do differently going forward. The courtroom was completely silent. I could hear the old heating system clicking in the walls. Mr. Reiner, do you understand these requirements? Yes, Your Honor. Do you accept them? Nick looked at Morrison, who nodded reluctantly. Then he looked back at me. Your Honor, can I ask something? What is it, Mr. Reiner? What if the treatment program doesn't work? What if I drink again? It was the first honest thing he'd said all morning. Then you'll start over. Addiction isn't cured by one program, Mr. Reiner. It's managed by daily choices. The question is whether you're willing to make better choices. I want to try. Trying isn't enough. Either you do it or you don't. There's no partial credit for good intentions. Morrison cleared his throat. Your Honor, my client accepts all terms of the accountability program. Mr. Morrison, I wasn't asking you. Mr. Reiner, do you accept these terms, fully understanding that failure to complete any portion will result in serving the full 90-day sentence? Nick straightened up in his chair. For the first time that morning, he looked me in the eye. Yes, Your Honor, I accept. Good, because if you fail to complete any portion of this program, you'll serve the full 90 days. And let me be clear, your father's production company, your family's connections, your trust fund, none of that will influence this court's decision. You're accountable to the same laws as everyone else. I looked at Morrison. Counselor, your client has 6 months to complete this program. I'll see you both back here on August 15th for final review. As they packed up their papers, Nick finally spoke up. Your Honor? Yes, Mr. Reiner. What if Mr. Chen doesn't want to see me? After the courtroom emptied, I sat there thinking about Arthur Chen, Purple Heart recipient, 74 years old, knocked down by a drunk kid who thought wealth was a superpower. I thought about Nick Reiner, 32 years of missed opportunities and enabled behavior finally catching up to him. Over the next 6 months, my clerk Eleanor provided regular updates on Nick's progress. Week 3, enrolled in an intensive outpatient program in Providence. Week 5, first attempt to contact Arthur Chen. Week 8, completed his first shift at the VA hospital. The reports painted a picture of someone genuinely trying to change. His counselor sent regular progress reports. Mr. Reiner is engaging more seriously than expected. He's starting to understand how his family's wealth enabled his addiction. But it was the report from the VA hospital that caught my attention. The volunteer coordinator wrote, Mr. Reiner has been exceptional with our elderly veterans. Several veterans have specifically requested to work with him. This is unusual for someone court-ordered to be here. 6 months later, I got a letter, not from Nick, from Arthur Chen. Judge Caprio, it read, I wanted you to know that young man came to see me. Emily was nervous about letting him in, but I told her everyone deserves the chance to apologize properly. He sat in my living room for 2 hours, brought me a book about Korean War history that he'd read cover to cover, cried like a baby when I showed him my Purple Heart. The letter continued. He helped me fix my back steps the next weekend, wouldn't take any money for materials. Emily said she'd never seen someone work so hard to make something right. I don't know if he's changed forever, but he changed that day. Sometimes that's enough for an old soldier like me. Thank you for giving us both a chance at something better. I kept one small thing from that day, the case file with Nick Reiner's mugshot paperclipped to the front. In the photo, he looks exactly like what he was, a privileged kid who'd never learned the weight of consequences. But tucked behind it now is Arthur's letter, and a photo Emily Chen sent me of Nick helping her grandfather into his wheelchair after a VA appointment. Money can buy a lot of things. It can't buy character. But sometimes, if you're willing to do the work, character can be earned, one apology at a time. I'm Frank Caprio. Remember, sometimes the best judgment is not in the book, it's in your heart. Thanks for listening, and God bless.